Grace and peace be multiplied unto you. Thank you for joining us for this, another Wednesday night, walking through the Word Bible class. We certainly appreciate you joining in with us for these next 30 minutes. Thank you to our intercessors who are consistent and diligent in their prayer time with us. We certainly appreciate you, Young and Sister Johnson. I want to draw your attention, or I want us for a backdrop for these moments of teaching to think about this just for a quick second. In Genesis chapter 1, I think around that 26th verse, and when God made man, he made man in his likeness and in his image. And when you think about that creation account and what I believe was a priority to God as he created Adam and Eve, what I believe is a priority to God. What becomes that priority that I am referencing or alluding to? I think one of the biggest things I think that we've missed in 21st century Christendom is the dynamics of relationships and the value of relationships. Isn't it interesting when God created Adam and Eve, placed them in the garden, the first thing he creates is them. When he creates them, the purpose of him creating them is so that they can be in relationship. That they can be in relationship and that they can work together for the cause of success and the movement of creation. Name everything. Have dominion and power, right? Created them in his image and his likeness, put them together to work in harmony through a healthy relationship. It's amazing because I think what God is sharing with us is his priorities as it relates to relationships. His priorities as it relates to relationships. And I think we need to evaluate and consider, especially in the moments and time of Christendom, we need to start looking at our relationship dynamics and what those relationships give us. Why did God connect us? What's the purpose behind relationships? And I want you to pause for a minute and really think about that. Is that before we had a church, we had relationships. Before we had organizations, we had relationships. If you look at the historical account, right, you don't get a church until the book of Acts. Genesis gives us humanity and creation because the priority for God is what's for relationships. And have we minimized God's priority? Have we minimized God's priority as it relates to relationships? And so it's where I wanted to hang out with you for these next 25, 30 minutes, because I think we need to evaluate and look at our relationships and the value that they bring to us. Right? And so what this priority for the priority that God presented was about relationships. It was about relationships. Adam and Eve, it was about a relationship. Let's look at John chapter 13. I'm going to look at John chapter 13. I think I want to lift verses 34 and 35. John chapter 13, 34 and 35. And let me give you just the lead up into verses 34 and 35. The betrayal, and Jesus is already aware of, in John chapter 13, that he will be betrayed. He understands it's going to be Judas. And he's already made declaration of that Judas is going to betray him. Again, what's the backdrop, the foundation of what we're looking at? Again, we're talking about relationships. Judas is a part of that circle. He has relationship with Jesus Christ, but Jesus knows that Judas is going to betray him. He's just aware of it. And during this time, they're asking questions. Jesus has highlighted the fact that he would be betrayed, and that the person that's close to them, that's a part of their circle, is a person that's going to betray him, is a person who's going to cause the relationship to go sour, right? And so during this moment, as Jesus understands that even though this is a part of his purpose, as we get to engage or embark upon it, we get to see this level of betrayal that's taking place in this relationship. But it's interesting that Jesus uses this moment of betrayal to teach his disciples and those who are close to him, how do we function in relationships? How are we going to be successful in our relationships? And it's interesting in John chapter 13, verse number 34, the word that hops out to me in verse number 34, the Bible says a new commandment. Jesus is saying a new commandment, right? He makes this statement on the backdrop of Judas betraying him, knowing that Judas is going to betray him. His response to his disciples in teaching them, he says that I've got something that I need you to embrace. In other words, I need you to open your heart to a new commandment. This commandment is relationship focused. John chapter 13, verse number 30. It is relationship focused. And Jesus doesn't leave them hanging because he gives them everything they need for their success. Again, don't miss the backdrop. Jesus makes this statement in John chapter 13, verse number 34, based upon the fact of the relationship with Judas going south. It's sour. Judas has made the decision he's going to betray him. As a matter of fact, if you sop in this cup, the one that sops in this cup, if you go back and peruse it, Jesus, that's the one. The one, in other words, the one that's close enough to betray me, that's who's going to betray me. The one who's close enough, who's already in relationship, that's who's going to betray me. But on the backdrop of betrayal, Jesus teaches his disciples, he says, a new commandment I give unto you. He says, a new commandment. The word new, right, becomes obvious. This is something that I have not shared with you previously, but I'm sharing it with you now because of what you're seeing as it relates to the behavior of Judas. He says, so I want you to open your hearts to something. I want you to open your hearts to something. And just because you've heard something or just because you've been around something doesn't mean that your heart is open to receive the very thing that you've been around. He says, a new commandment I give unto you. What is this commandment? He says that ye love one another as I have loved you, right? He says, this is the commandment, but not only do I give you a commandment, I also give you a real life illustration on how to get this done, right? I give you a real life illustration. I give you a commandment, this new commandment I give to you, that you do what? Love one another as I have loved you. And so Jesus is saying, based upon what you've experienced through our relationship, is based upon what you should reciprocate through relationships with other people. I'll say it again because I think it's noteworthy. He says, this new commandment that I give to you, that if you're going to maintain healthy relationships, you got to love the way I've loved you. And if you have been a recipient of my love, then you know how I love. The only thing you've got to do now is to give that same love to somebody else. He teaches them how to love. Because if you're going to have relationships, we got to know the how. What is our measuring tool? What becomes our template? What becomes the very thing that we can follow as it relates to love? Well, Jesus says, the way I loved you, then guess what? You love others the same way. He teaches them the how. He teaches them the how. Have we embraced the how, though? Because if you've received love from him, then there's no question of how I should love. Because you've been a recipient of the very love that he's telling you now to demonstrate. You have been the recipient, right, of the very thing that he's telling you now how to demonstrate it, right? So I want you to love this way. I need you to love how I love. It's a challenge for us, isn't it? Because even though Judas was betraying him, he did not turn his back or forsake Judas, right? He allowed Judas to deal with himself. Jesus maintained still his love for him, right? It's a difficult challenge, especially when you know that someone is working against you, and yet the challenge is for you to love them like Christ would, because he's given it to you, and therefore you should know how to reciprocate it. Interesting. It's a real life challenge, people of God. It's a real life challenge. But what is he doing? He's teaching them based up on the experience that he's had with Judas. He says, this, a new commandment I give to you, that you what? Love one another. He teaches them the how. How I love. He says, I am the example of love. Note that, if you will. I am the example of love. He says, I teach you based upon me loving you, right? Secondly, he says, who should you love, right? He says, the how should I love? And a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, right? As I have loved you, this is the how. Then secondly, he gives the who. That I have loved you, that you also love one another. The who is those who you are in contact with, those of you who are connected to, and those who have been created by him. Right? That's the one another. Created by God, all of humanity. You have no reason not to love humanity. You have no reason not to love humanity, because the criteria of my how is based upon how he's loved. And while we were yet in a place where we didn't deserve to be loved, that's when he loved us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That was his love, his demonstration of his love. And so he doesn't wait until we get it all together to love us. He loves us from the place we are so that we can get it together. Would you note that, if you will? That what your love should do, your love should have such an impact that if a person doesn't have it together, they begin to experience your love so that there is a desire to get it together. Love one another. Love one another. Not love one another based upon conditions. Right? We have enough of that. We have enough of conditional people of God. We have enough of conditional love. Right? Based upon a condition. Is that really love, though? Is that really love? Because while we were in our lowest place, God loved us. Christ loved us. And he said, if you're going to love, you're going to have to love based upon how I love. That's the how. Loving one another. All of humanity. It doesn't specify love those who you decide to love based upon what they have, what they can give you. The text says that ye also love one another. Speaking to his disciples, speaking to this inner circle, right? Looking at the behavior of Judas and the betrayal. Because I believe what Jesus is teaching them, that when you love like I love, you don't betray. You don't possess the attitude, you don't possess the mindset or the intent to betray, because you love how I love. Right? And so we have to get to the place, and it's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for all of us. Because anytime there is an opportunity, people of God, to revenge or to get back, we have to on purpose decide not to do that. You have to on purpose decide not to do that. Because if not, man, your flesh will just go. And Christ says, I don't love like that. I didn't try to get Judas back. I didn't try to get Peter back. As a matter of fact, when Peter denied me, I restored him through love. And this is a challenge that Christ has given us, that we've got to love how he loved. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's a challenge. But I think if we're going to be impactful, I think if we're going to get to the place where God is desiring us to be, I think we got to get back to reevaluating, as I alluded to before, the relationship dynamics. I think we can have the opportunity. So many times there's a mindset of putting everything before the relationship. And Christ is saying, that's not how I establish this peace. I establish relationships, and from the relationships, everything else is produced. Back to the Genesis account. He teaches the how. He teaches the who. But then he said, this is why you have to love. In verse number 35, he said, this is why you have to love. He said, this is how you have to love. Because it's your identifying factor that you are in relationship with me. You have to love how you love, who you love, because it's the identifying factor that you're in relationship with me. Verse number 35. By this, what is this? Love. Shall all men know that you belong to me, that we're in relationship. You are my disciples. What? We've been researching and trying to figure out, well, how do we do it? And Christ says, just make a priority what I've made a priority. Love. How's your love walk? How is your love walk? And we're human beings. Don't get me wrong. We're human beings. But I think our love walk has to be at a place where love prompts us into communication, into connection, into making sure we're looking at right context. I think that's what love does. I think love is understanding. I think that's what love is. Love is understanding. Love is also the desire to understand. Love is also the desire to fix it. It's a desire to fix it. He says, when you have these things, these tangibles, these pieces, he says, here's the identifying fact. He says, become a part of the witness. He says, because ultimately that's what I want people to see. I want people to see me, Christ, but the only way they can see me is based upon your actions of love. It's interesting. But if you don't love, then you're not identified as being one of his disciples. The text says, not me, but by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples. That our relationship is what prompts me to maintain and love others. My relationship with him. It's a challenge. He's just an identifying factor. That's the only way other people are going to know that you're my disciples. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love one to another. He gives us the why. Talks about the how. Love like I've loved. He talked about the who, one another, all of mankind, all of humanity. And then he talks about why you need to do it. He says, because others will know. You are my disciples based upon the fact that we've loved one another. I think it's an area of challenge and growth for all of us. I don't think any of us who are listening on this live, who engaged in this walking through the word moment, I don't think any of us have plateaued to a place where we can say, oh, I know how to love. I think we need to tweak it every day. I think you need to work on it every day, but I think it has to be intentional. It has to be a part of your desire and want to. Love is not silent. It communicates. It communicates. Love doesn't leave it broke. It fixes it. What's our challenge? What's tangible? What do we walk away with? What can I have? What can I possess? Number one, it's your how. No excuse now. He said the criteria of your love, the criteria for love, is love how I've loved. And if you haven't reached that place, then we're still growing to reach that desired destination. Love how I love. Who do I love? All of mankind. All of mankind. Because love doesn't say, I'm going to love you because of what you can give me. I'm going to love you because you got it right. Love says, I just love you. It stands alone without conditions. And then thirdly, why do I love? Why do I need to love? Because it's a direct representation that you are in relationship with him. And because of the relationship with him, it produces this type of love. And so I guess the first question or the challenge for us would be, if we're going to start this journey of growing into that place of love, are you in relationship with him? Have you allowed him to demonstrate his love to you? It's a challenge for all of us. I know it's a challenge for me every day as we're striving, right, to love. We know how we should love, how he loved. Then we know who we should love, all of mankind. Importantly, why do we love? Because it's our illustration, our demonstration that we're in relationship with him. And it's a critical part of how we're able to witness. Love is a part of our witness. And because we can love, it shows our ability to witness to others through love. It's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for you. Let's start now. Evaluating our love. When you love, don't allow miscommunication to disconnect you. When you love, don't harbor things in your heart. Get it out. When you love, tell the truth about where you are. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Acknowledge what you're feeling. I didn't say act out on it. Because what you're feeling is one thing. Acting out on that feeling could cause you not to love. And so it's a challenge for us, people of God. Thank you for being a part of these moments with us. We appreciate you so much. God bless you and God keep you. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday morning as you prepare yourself. I want to encourage you to take part in prayer and take part in Bible class and take part in Sunday morning worship. God bless you and God sustain you is my prayer. And as always, thank you for being a hill watcher. Grace and peace be multiplied unto you.